There is a quiet moment many people experience after 60, usually unnoticed by others. It happens when you stand up from a chair and feel your legs hesitate, not in pain, not injured, just uncertain. Or when you climb stairs you've climbed for decades and your muscles no longer answer with the same confidence. In that moment, a silent belief forms. My body is no longer listening to me. Most people accept this as aging, but biology tells a more interesting story. Muscles do not simply disappear because years pass. They withdraw when communication breaks down. Inside the body, every muscle fiber is part of a living conversation between the nervous system, blood flow, hormones, and movement. After 60, that conversation often becomes distorted, not because the body has failed, but because its signals have changed. What once spoke clearly now whispers. What once repaired quickly now waits for permission. This is not a story of loss, it is a story of miscommunication, and miscommunication can be corrected. When we understand why muscles stop responding, we begin to see that strength is not something we lose with age, but something the body stops prioritizing when it no longer feels safe, supported, or needed. And when that priority shifts again, the body listens. After 60, many people assume their muscles have worn out, as if tissue simply expires with time. But when we look closely at how the body works, we see something more subtle and more hopeful. Muscles are not independent structures, they are deeply connected to the nervous system, which decides how much energy the body invests in strength, repair, and growth. Every movement you make is first approved by the brain and spinal cord, and over time, those approvals become more conservative. The nervous system becomes protective. It starts asking a quiet question before every effort. Is this safe and is this necessary? When movement decreases, even slightly, the nervous system interprets it as a signal that strength is no longer required at the same level. It does not distinguish between intentional rest and gradual withdrawal. Sitting more, moving less, avoiding strain all tell the brain that muscles are no longer essential for survival. In response, the nervous system reduces the frequency and intensity of motor signals sent to muscle fibers. Muscles are still present, but they are under-informed. Without regular, clear instructions, they shift into a maintenance mode rather than a growth mode. This change is not immediate, and that is why it often goes unnoticed. Muscle fibers begin to receive weaker neural input. Fewer motor units are recruited during movement. The body chooses efficiency over strength. In biology, tissue always adapts to the level of demand placed upon it. Another layer of this process involves the brain's perception of risk. As we age, the nervous system becomes more sensitive to instability, past injuries, and unfamiliar sensations. Even minor discomfort can be interpreted as a threat. When the brain senses threat, it limits force output to prevent injury. This protective response is wise, but when it becomes chronic, it suppresses strength. Muscles are capable of more, but the nervous system will not allow full engagement if it believes the environment is unsafe. This is why many older adults report feeling weak even when muscle mass has not drastically changed. The limitation is not in the muscle tissue itself, but in the signal that activates it. Studies of aging show that neural drive to muscles declines earlier and faster than muscle fiber loss. The body reduces effort before it reduces structure. Weakness appears before true atrophy, which is why early intervention is so powerful. The nervous system also responds to metabolic signals. When blood sugar regulation becomes unstable, when inflammation rises, or when recovery feels incomplete, the brain shifts the body into energy conservation. In this state, muscle growth is not a priority. Repair processes slow. Strength feels distant. The body is not failing, it is reallocating resources toward what it perceives as survival needs. What is often missed is that the nervous system is adaptable at any age. It learns through repetition, safety, and reassurance. When movement is introduced gradually, when balance improves, when circulation increases, the brain begins to trust the body again. Signals strengthen, motor units wake up, muscles respond not because they were rebuilt from nothing, but because communication was restored. This understanding changes how we approach aging. Instead of forcing muscles to perform, we focus on restoring the signals that invite them to participate. Strength returns not through aggression, but through clarity. The body does not resist aging, it responds to meaning. When muscles feel needed, supported, and safe, they answer again. As we move past 60, another quiet shift begins to influence muscle responsiveness, one that is less visible than nerve signaling, but equally powerful. This shift occurs at the cellular level, where muscles decide whether to rebuild, maintain, or slowly decline. Muscle tissue is constantly renewing itself. Proteins are broken down and rebuilt every day, a process known as muscle protein turnover. In youth, this cycle favors rebuilding. With age, the balance subtly changes, not because the machinery disappears, but because the signals that activate it become weaker and less frequent. At the center of this process is muscle protein synthesis, the mechanism through which muscle fibers repair damage and grow stronger. After 60, muscle cells become less sensitive to the nutrients and stimuli that once triggered this response easily. This phenomenon is often described as anabolic resistance. The body still receives protein, still absorbs amino acids, but the muscle cells respond more slowly and less efficiently. It is not a lack of resources, it is a reduced sensitivity to instruction. This resistance develops gradually and is strongly influenced by lifestyle patterns. Periods of inactivity, irregular eating, and chronic low-grade inflammation all reinforce the message that muscle rebuilding is not urgent. When the body doesn't sense regular mechanical demand, it deprioritizes protein synthesis in muscle tissue. Energy is redirected toward other systems. Muscles remain present, but they exist in a state of quiet conservation rather than renewal. Inflammation plays a critical role here. As the immune system becomes more active with age, inflammatory signals interfere with the pathways that initiate muscle repair. These signals do not cause immediate pain or visible illness, which is why they are often ignored. Yet at the cellular level, they block key enzymes and hormonal signals responsible for assembling new muscle proteins. The result is a body that eats enough, rests enough, yet still feels weaker over time. Hormonal shifts further compound this effect. Insulin, growth hormone, and other anabolic messengers become less effective at delivering their instructions to muscle cells. The messages arrive, but the volume is lower. This is why many older adults notice that the same diet and activity level that once maintained strength no longer produces the same results. The internal environment has changed, and muscles require clearer, more consistent signals to respond. What is important to understand is that anabolic resistance is not permanent. Muscle cells retain their capacity to adapt. They simply require stronger context. Regular movement, especially resistance-based activity, reawakens the molecular sensors that detect strain and initiate repair. When muscles experience even mild tension repeatedly, they relearn that rebuilding is necessary. Over time, sensitivity improves, and protein synthesis becomes more responsive again. Nutrition timing matters more with age. Muscles respond best when nutrients arrive close to periods of use. When protein intake is evenly distributed and paired with movement, muscle cells interpret this as a coordinated message rather than random supply. This coordination restores trust in the system. the body shifts from preservation to participation. Hydration, circulation, and micronutrient availability further influence this process. Muscle cells are highly sensitive to their internal environment. When blood flow is reduced or oxidative stress is high, protein synthesis slows regardless of intake. Supporting circulation and reducing cellular stress allow muscle tissue to respond more fully to nourishment and activity. Understanding this process removes the blame often placed on aging bodies. Muscles do not stop responding because they are old. They stop responding because the signals guiding them have become inconsistent or muted. When those signals are restored through deliberate movement, adequate nutrition, and a calmer internal environment, muscles begin to listen again. Strength does not return overnight, but responsiveness does, and from responsiveness, resilience gradually follows. After 60, circulation becomes one of the most decisive factors in whether muscles feel alive or unresponsive. Muscles do not function in isolation. They depend on a continuous exchange with the bloodstream. Oxygen, glucose, amino acids, minerals, and signaling molecules must arrive on time, while metabolic waste must be removed efficiently. When this exchange slows, muscles may still be present in size, but their performance declines. Movements feel heavier, endurance drops, and recovery takes longer, not because the muscle fibers have disappeared, but because their supply lines have weakened. With age, blood vessels gradually lose elasticity. The inner lining of the arteries, known as the endothelium, becomes less responsive to signals that tell vessels to widen during activity. This reduces the ability to increase blood flow precisely when muscles need it most. In the legs, where blood must travel against gravity, even small reductions in vascular flexibility can translate into significant functional limitations. Walking becomes tiring, standing feels unstable, and muscles fatigue before they are truly challenged. Circulation is also tightly linked to mitochondrial function inside muscle cells. Mitochondria are the structures responsible for producing energy, and they rely on oxygen delivered through the bloodstream. When circulation is compromised, mitochondria shift into a lower output state. Energy production becomes less efficient, and muscles rely more heavily on emergency pathways that produce fatigue faster. This is why older adults often describe their legs as feeling heavy rather than weak. The sensation reflects an energy delivery problem rather than a structural failure. Inflammation and oxidative stress further impair circulation. Chronic low-grade inflammation stiffens blood vessels and disrupts nitric oxide signaling, which is essential for vasodilation. Oxidative damage to the vascular lining reduces its ability to respond dynamically to movement. Over time, this creates a feedback loop where reduced circulation limits activity, reduced activity worsens circulation, and muscles gradually lose responsiveness despite adequate nutrition and intention. Nerve signaling is also affected by circulation. Peripheral nerves that coordinate muscle contraction depend on a steady supply of oxygen and nutrients. When blood flow is inconsistent, nerve impulses slow, coordination declines, and reaction time increases. Muscles may still be capable of generating force, but the timing becomes unreliable. This loss of precision is often mistaken for muscle weakness, when in reality, it reflects impaired communication due to reduced vascular support. The encouraging reality is that circulation remains highly adaptable well into later life. Blood vessels respond positively to regular movement, especially rhythmic, weight-bearing activity. Walking, gentle resistance exercises, and even sustained standing stimulate the endothelium to produce signals that restore flexibility. Over time, vessels relearn how to widen and narrow efficiently, improving blood delivery to working muscles. Hydration also plays a critical role. Blood volume and viscosity directly influence circulation quality.
Even mild dehydration thickens the blood, increasing resistance within vessels and reducing flow to peripheral tissues. Older adults often experience diminished thirst signals, making consistent hydration essential for maintaining muscular responsiveness and endurance. Nutritional delivery improves as circulation improves. Amino acids required for muscle repair reach fibers more efficiently, glucose is transported more predictably, and waste products such as lactate and inflammatory byproducts are cleared faster. This creates an internal environment where muscles feel lighter, recover faster, and respond more readily to effort. Strength gains become possible not because muscles suddenly grow larger, but because the conditions for performance are restored. Improved circulation also enhances confidence in movement. As muscles respond more predictably, fear of fatigue or instability diminishes. This psychological shift encourages more activity, which further reinforces vascular health. The body enters a virtuous cycle where movement improves blood flow improves muscle response, and improved muscle response encourages continued movement. When muscles stop responding after 60, circulation is often the missing link. Restoring flow restores dialogue between systems. The muscles begin to feel connected again, supplied, energized, and capable of responding to intention rather than resisting it. In this state, strength becomes less about force and more about continuity, a steady exchange that allows movement to feel supported, efficient, and alive once more.
After 60, the balance between oxidative stress and repair quietly shifts, and muscles are among the first tissues to feel the consequences. Every movement, every breath, every calorie converted into energy produces reactive byproducts as a natural part of metabolism. In younger years, the body neutralizes these molecules efficiently, keeping cellular structures intact and responsive. With age, this neutralizing capacity weakens, not because the body stops producing antioxidants entirely, but because the demand increases while repair systems slow. Muscles, which require constant energy turnover, become especially vulnerable to this imbalance. Inside each muscle fiber are mitochondria that generate energy through controlled chemical reactions. These reactions inevitably release reactive molecules that can damage proteins, membranes, and genetic material if left unchecked. When oxidative stress accumulates, mitochondrial efficiency declines. Energy output becomes less stable, and muscles lose their ability to sustain contraction over time. This manifests as early fatigue, burning sensations, and a sense that muscles tire long before they should. The muscle is still present, but its internal engines are no longer running cleanly. Oxidative damage also affects the structural proteins that give muscle fibers their strength and elasticity. Proteins responsible for contraction and relaxation can become stiff or misaligned when exposed to excessive oxidative stress. This reduces the smoothness of movement and increases the effort required for basic actions, such as standing, climbing stairs, or rising from a chair. Over time, repeated exposure to oxidative damage without adequate repair contributes to microdegeneration that compounds functional decline. The vascular system is not spared from this process. Oxidative stress damages the delicate lining of blood vessels, reducing their ability to respond to changes in demand. When muscles call for increased blood flow during activity, oxidatively stressed vessels respond sluggishly. Oxygen delivery becomes inconsistent, and waste removal slows. This further increases oxidative burden inside muscle tissue, creating a cycle where poor circulation amplifies cellular damage and cellular damage worsens circulation. Nerve tissue is equally sensitive. The communication between nerves and muscles depends on intact membranes and efficient signal transmission. Oxidative stress disrupts these processes by altering ion channels and neurotransmitter balance. Signals become less precise, coordination declines, and muscles may activate later than intended or with reduced force.
This contributes to the feeling that muscles are disconnected from intention, responding unpredictably despite conscious effort. What makes oxidative stress particularly impactful after 60 is its cumulative nature. Damage does not appear overnight, it accumulates quietly, layer by layer, until a threshold is crossed and function noticeably declines. Many individuals interpret this as sudden aging, when in reality it is the visible expression of years of subtle cellular strain finally exceeding repair capacity. Yet, oxidative stress is not an irreversible sentence. The body retains the ability to restore balance when conditions allow. Reducing oxidative load begins with supporting mitochondrial health through consistent movement. Gentle, regular activity improves mitochondrial efficiency, reducing the amount of reactive byproducts produced per unit of energy. Muscles learn to generate power more cleanly, decreasing internal stress during everyday movement. Circulation again plays a supporting role. Improved blood flow delivers antioxidants and repair molecules more effectively to muscle tissue. It also accelerates the removal of oxidative byproducts, preventing their accumulation. Hydration enhances this process by maintaining optimal blood viscosity, allowing antioxidant defenses to reach tissues efficiently. Nutritional support further strengthens antioxidant capacity. The body relies on dietary compounds to replenish its defensive systems. When these systems are adequately supported, oxidative damage slows, repair pathways re-engage, and muscle fibers regain resilience.
This does not eliminate aging, but it restores equilibrium between stress and repair, allowing function to stabilize rather than decline. As oxidative stress decreases, muscles begin to feel more responsive. Endurance improves because energy production becomes more efficient. Movements regain fluidity as contractile proteins function with less interference. Recovery accelerates because repair mechanisms are no longer overwhelmed by ongoing damage. The legs feel lighter, not because they are stronger in isolation, but because the internal environment supporting them has become less hostile and more cooperative. Understanding oxidative stress reframes muscle decline as a biochemical imbalance rather than a structural failure. When the internal terrain becomes supportive again, muscles rediscover their ability to respond, adapt, and sustain movement with confidence, revealing that even after 60, cellular harmony remains within reach when stress is reduced and repair is allowed to resume. After 60, one of the most overlooked reasons muscles stop responding is not weakness itself, but a gradual breakdown in communication between the brain, nerves, and muscle fibers. Movement is never just a muscular event. Every step begins as an electrical intention in the brain, travels through complex neural pathways, and finally reaches muscle cells as a precise signal telling them when, how strongly, and in what sequence to contract. With age, this signaling system can lose clarity. Messages arrive slower, less synchronized, or slightly distorted, and the muscle responds with hesitation rather than power. This is why many people feel that their muscles are still there, yet they no longer obey the way they once did. Nerve cells rely on healthy membranes, efficient energy supply, and stable chemical balance to transmit signals accurately. Aging introduces subtle changes in all three. Myelin, the insulating layer around nerves, can thin over time, slowing signal transmission. Blood flow to neural tissue may decline, reducing oxygen and nutrient delivery. Neurotransmitter balance can shift, altering the timing and strength of signals reaching muscles. None of these changes are dramatic alone, but together they create a nervous system that communicates with muscles less confidently, leading to delayed reactions, poor coordination, and a sense of instability. Muscles themselves adapt to this reduced signaling by becoming less responsive. When signals arrive inconsistently, muscle fibers are activated less often and less completely.
Over time, unused fibers begin to disengage, not because they are damaged, but because they are no longer being called upon. This contributes to the perception of sudden weakness, even when muscle mass has not dramatically changed. The body follows the principle of efficiency, conserving resources where demand appears low, further reinforcing the disconnect between intention and action. Reactivating muscles naturally requires restoring this communication loop. The nervous system responds strongly to repetition, rhythm, and precision. Slow, deliberate movement retrains neural pathways by emphasizing control over speed. When movements are performed with attention, the brain refines its signals, nerves strengthen their connections, and muscles relearn how to respond accurately. This is why slow walking, balance exercises, and mindful resistance movements are so effective after 60. They prioritize neural engagement rather than brute force. Breathing plays a critical role in this process. Oxygen supports both nerve and muscle function, while rhythmic breathing stabilizes the autonomic nervous system. When breathing is shallow or irregular, nerve signaling becomes erratic, increasing tension and reducing coordination. Deep, steady breathing improves oxygen delivery to neural tissue and calms background stress signals that interfere with motor control. This creates a neurological environment where clear communication can resume. Nutrition and hydration also influence neuromuscular signaling. Electrolytes regulate electrical activity in nerves and muscles. Even mild imbalances can disrupt signal transmission, leading to cramps, weakness, or delayed muscle activation. Adequate fluid intake maintains the medium through which electrical impulses travel, while minerals support the channels that control contraction and relaxation. Supporting these systems does not require extremes, but consistency, allowing signaling pathways to remain responsive throughout the day. Equally important is confidence in movement. Fear alters neural patterns, prioritizing caution over coordination. When individuals limit movement due to fear of falling or pain, neural circuits weaken further. Gentle exposure to controlled movement rebuilds trust between the brain and body. Each successful movement reinforces the idea that muscles can respond safely, strengthening neural pathways through positive feedback rather than avoidance. Over time, improved neuromuscular communication transforms how movement feels. Steps become smoother because muscles activate in the correct sequence. Balance improves because reflexes respond faster. Strength appears to return, not as sudden power, but as reliability. The legs feel dependable again, capable of supporting the body without constant conscious effort. This restoration is not about forcing muscles to perform, but about re-establishing dialogue between intention and action. When muscles respond again, it becomes clear that aging did not silence them. The message simply became faint. By restoring neural clarity through movement, breath, nourishment, and confidence, the body reconnects its internal network, allowing muscles to re-engage with purpose and precision, reminding us that responsiveness is not lost with age. It waits patiently for the signal to be clear again.